Jesse Friesen from the Real News Network reporting here from Toronto. I'm here in front of the Toronto Police Headquarters, and a few hundred people have gathered to denounce what they see as abuse of power by Toronto police over the last few days. By the time the speakers began, the hastily organized rally had drawn more than 1,500 people. This followed the incarceration of roughly 1,000 people, the largest mass arrest in Canadian history. According to police, 70% of those arrested were never charged, under a provision called breaching the Queen's peace. Some of those released shared their experiences at Monday's rally.
Obstruct?
Ow!
Conspiracy to commit mischief?
There were strip searches, and in my cell, women were asked to bend down and spread their legs. That 17-year-old girl was made to pee in front of the people. She had no one to stand in front of the stall.
Filmmaker and journalist Amy Miller was reporting for the G20 Alternative Media Center when she was arrested. She gave her testimony at a press conference on Monday.
I was throttled at the neck and held down, and then I was detained for nearly 13 hours. I was in a cell with 25 other young women. I was told I was going to be raped. I was told I was going to be gangbanged. I was told that they were going to make sure that I was never going to want to act as a journalist again by making sure that I would be repeatedly raped. I saw numerous young women who were strip searched by male officers, and one young woman, when she was coming out, who was completely traumatized, said that she had had a finger put up her.
On Tuesday, the staff superintendent in charge of the prison was asked about some of the accusations.
You might have heard wrong, and some of the female protesters complained that they were strip searched by male officers.
Yeah, I had that question before, and I can assure you that that did not occur.
There was violence, arbitrary searches, prolonged and unlawful detentions, poor conditions in the detention centers, and other breaches of the charter rights. And so we're calling for a public inquiry.
Police Chief Bill Blair has offered an internal task force to investigate. Wouldn't it be in the best interest to have a public inquiry about things that went on during this?
I'm not the federal government of Canada or the provincial government. We will look at our practices and reviews. People have the right to complain. If someone chooses to have an inquiry, we'll provide them with the information to assist them.
I was one of hundreds of people who were scooped up outside the Novotel Hotel for standing up for our rights for free speech and free assembly. And we witnessed the police also exercise a media blackout so information couldn't get out about what was happening to the arrestees.
When I spoke to mainstream journalists last week, they all wanted to talk about gas masks. They all said they wanted to hear so-called stories about violence.
Shame!
So let's talk about violence. When I hear that word, violence, I think about those hundreds and thousands of lives lost as a result of G8, G20 actions. I also think about the local violence. And I'm not talking about broken glass. I mean broken skin and bones of activists on streets. I mean the use of tear gas and rubber bullets without provocation or warning. I mean preemptive nighttime raids without warrants, mass arrests and detention without access to legal counsel and without charge. State violence that we witnessed on the streets of Toronto is a microcosm of the global workings of the G8 and the G20. It's bait and switch, putting the spotlight on property damage in place of violence against people's bodies, lands, rights, and livelihoods is an act of violence in itself.
On Saturday morning, after the tent city over at Allen Gardens, myself and a few organizers were packing up our banners. We were heading over to the Labor March to march in solidarity with unions. And we were confronted by snatch squads, undercover vans, unmarked vans. That cut off our taxi cab, opened the doors, dragged out our organizer, threw him into a van. I got back into another taxi to head over to the demonstration, and another snatch squad came, swarmed the cab again, took me out, put me into another unmarked vehicle and drove me around the city trying to intimidate me.
This footage shows a snatch and grab at a jail solidarity protest. This time the target was Washington, D.C. based independent journalist Lacey McCauley. McCauley stands charged with assaulting an officer. She has published her story on the Toronto Media Co-op. It includes being strangled, punched, and verbally abused by men with no uniforms who refuse to identify themselves. Professor David McNally of Toronto's York University was the MC of the rally.
The police at Queen and Spadina arrested every demonstrator they could get their hands on.
You're all going to be arrested for conspiracy to commit mischief. You don't want to hurt you. You're all going to be arrested. Line up here and you'll be arrested nicely.
They claimed they had found weapons and so on when they were making these arrests. Then, an hour and a half later, police spokesperson comes on the television news and says to us, "We've released them all." Now, I'm sorry, you can't have it both ways. If they found weapons, what are they doing releasing these people? The reality is, there were no weapons. The reality is, they simply wanted to take people off the street who were behaving entirely peacefully.
Toronto Mayor David Miller expressed strong support for the Toronto Police.
And I thought the Toronto Police Service acted with admirable professionalism in dealing with those violent protests and in dealing with people who were simply exercising their democratic right to free speech, but were caught in a situation that meant the police had to use extraordinary measures.
After all of the shit our communities have gone through as a result of these goons here, our mayor had the nerve to come out and say that he was proud of these bastards!
People marched to City Hall to express their condemnation in front of the mayor's office. Police Chief Blair has called the arrests, detentions, searches, and other actions necessary in order to combat what he calls a criminal conspiracy. For McNally, the rally was necessary to combat what he sees as an attack on dissent.
Had we not come out in the streets today, the evening after, and taken our agenda out there publicly, given thousands of people a sense of confidence again that they have the right to do this, the effect would be chilling unless we respond, unless we come out and say loudly and clearly, this will not be tolerated. Grassroots social justice movements across this city and beyond, with our supporters everywhere, are going to stand up and resist. That's going to take a legal front, that's going to take street demonstrations, it's going to take a broad-based social campaign.
So they can line these streets with cops all they want, but they're not going to stop us from marching yet again!
On Thursday, Canada's national holiday, another rally will be held, this time in front of the provincial legislature, to demand a public inquiry into the actions of the G20.